She was already a Grammy-winning songwriter before Real Housewives of Atlanta. The show just showed the world what she'd been quietly building. By the time most people recognized her face on a Bravo reality show, Kandi Burruss had already co-written some of the biggest pop records of a generation. She had already built a music publishing catalog that paid her in her sleep. She had already survived grief, industry politics, and the kind of personal loss that breaks most people before they hit 30. Real Housewives of Atlanta didn't make Kandi Burruss. It just turned on the lights. And what people saw standing in those lights was not a housewife. It was an operator, a builder. A woman who had spent 20 years laying a financial foundation so deep and so wide that no single industry could ever pull it out from under her. This is the story of how Kandi Burruss turned visibility into leverage, leverage into empire, and empire into something that will outlast every season of television she's ever appeared on. This is what generational wealth looks like when nobody's paying attention. The girl from College Park. Born Kandi Burruss on May 17, 1976, in College Park, Georgia, Kandi grew up in a household where ambition and accountability were the same word. Her mother, Joyce Burruss, would later become a recognizable television presence in her own right. But long before cameras arrived, the household was shaped by something quieter and harder resilience. The kind that doesn't come from motivation books, the kind that comes from real life demanding more from you than you thought you had. In 1991, Kandi lost her brother Patrick in a car accident. He was 22 years old. The grief was profound, formative. It didn't slow her down. It sharpened her. It gave her urgency at an age when most teenagers are still figuring out who they are. That urgency found structure at Tri-Cities High School, a performing arts institution in East Point, Georgia, where talent was not unusual, but discipline separated the serious ones from the rest. Kandi was serious. At just 15 years old, she appeared on Black Entertainment Television's Teen Summit, a nationally televised platform built around socially conscious youth. The camera didn't make her nervous. It confirmed something she already knew. While still in school, she co-founded the R&B group Xscape alongside classmates Tamika Scott, LaTocha Scott, and Tamara Tiny Cottle. The group was discovered by producer Jermaine Dupri, who signed them to So Def Recordings. By the time Kandi graduated in 1994, Xscape was already climbing. Their debut album, Hummin' Comin' at Cha, released in 1993, reached number 3 on the R&B charts and went platinum. It was driven by hits like Just Kickin' It and Understanding. The follow-up, Off the Hook, in 1995, delivered more top 10 singles, and Traces of My Lipstick in 1998 cemented the group's legacy with My Little Secret. When LaTocha Scott left to pursue a solo career, Xscape paused, reuniting later for soundtrack work and brief returns. But that pause opened a new lane for Kandi, and she walked straight through it. The songwriting machine. While most people were watching Xscape perform, Kandi was learning something more valuable than performance. She was learning craft, construction, the architecture of a hit. Even while touring and recording, she was quietly pivoting toward what would become her most powerful financial lever: songwriting. Not just writing songs for herself, writing songs that would live forever on other people's records. In 1999, she co-wrote No Scrubs for TLC. That single did not just go to number 1. It redefined what late 90s pop music sounded like. It won a Grammy. And more importantly, it generated a royalty stream that has never stopped paying. Think about that for a moment. A song written over 25 years ago still earns money every time it plays on a streaming service, every time a DJ spins it at a wedding, every time a commercial uses it, every time TLC performs it on a nostalgia tour. That is not a career. That is infrastructure. The credits stacked fast after that. Bills, bills, bills for Destiny's Child. Bugaboo for Destiny's Child. There You Go for Pink. Songs for Whitney Houston, Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey, Usher, and NSYNC. Each one a new revenue stream. Each one a new thread in a royalty web that grew wider every year. In 2017, publishing rights connected to Ed Sheeran's Shape of You further underscored the durability of her catalog. The music business rewards the performer with a moment. It rewards the songwriter with a lifetime. Kandi chose the lifetime. She also refused to abandon her own voice. In 2000, she released her solo debut, Hey Kandi, featuring singles like Don't Think I'm Not. In 2010, she followed up with Kandi Koated, while simultaneously founding Kandi Koated Entertainment, a production company designed to give her control over what she created and how it moved through the world. Control became the theme. It always had been. The Real Housewives of Atlanta years visibility as a business strategy. In 2009, Kandi Burruss joined the cast of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. She would go on to become the franchise's longest-serving cast member, staying for 14 seasons before stepping away in 2024. But here is the thing most people miss about Kandi's relationship with reality television. She did not join RHOA to become famous. She was already famous. She joined because she understood something about the moment she was living in, that audiences were shifting, that personal branding was becoming its own currency, and that a show watched by millions every week was the most powerful marketing platform that had ever existed for a woman in her position. Every season she appeared in was a commercial, not in a cynical way, in a strategic way. While other cast members were managing drama, Kandi was managing optics. She let the audience into her world just enough to see the restaurants, the brand launches, the recording sessions, the business meetings. At her peak, she was reportedly earning between $2 million and $2.3 million per season as a main cast member, making her one of Bravo's highest-paid stars. That alone would be a remarkable number. But Kandi never stopped at the base salary. She expanded the universe with spin-offs: Kandi's Wedding, Kandi's Ski Trip, Kandi and the Gang, The Kandi Factory. She co-created Kandi Koated Nights, turning conversation into content and content into additional income. Each spin-off was not just another show, it was another negotiation, another check, another piece of intellectual property with her name on it. In 2020, she won The Masked Singer as Night Angel, becoming the first woman to take the crown on that show. Another proof point. Another signal to the industry that her versatility was not a quirk, it was a competitive advantage. And then came Broadway. The business pillars breaking down the empire. Now, let us get into the actual architecture of this thing, because understanding Kandi's wealth means understanding that no single pillar holds it up. She built a portfolio with enough structural diversity that if one industry collapsed tomorrow, the rest would still be standing. Music royalties. At the foundation of everything Kandi has built sits music, passive income, the kind that does not require her to show up, perform, or post anything. Her songwriting catalog includes some of the most streamed and most licensed records of the last 3 decades. No Scrubs alone has accumulated over 1 billion streams across platforms. Bills, bills, bills is a cultural artifact that resurfaces every few years through films, television placements, and live performances. Every time Beyoncé performs Destiny's Child material on a world tour, and those tours generate hundreds of millions of dollars, Kandi receives a check. Music royalty income for a catalog of this size is estimated to generate between $1 million and $3 million per year in passive earnings. That number grows during licensing cycles, anniversary re-releases, and nostalgia tours. It never goes to zero. It is the most durable financial asset a creative person can own, and Kandi owns a lot of it. Bedroom Kandi. Launched in 2011, Bedroom Kandi is one of her most profitable and most quietly powerful ventures. It is a premium intimacy and lifestyle brand, built on a direct sales model, meaning thousands of independent consultants across the country earn commission selling Bedroom Kandi products, while Kandi earns from the top of that structure. The direct sales model is not glamorous, but it is exceptionally scalable. It requires minimal overhead once the systems are in place, and it builds a self-sustaining distributor network that functions independently of Kandi's personal involvement day to day. The brand is built around women's empowerment and sexual wellness, 2 categories that were growing rapidly before the pandemic and have since become mainstream consumer conversations. Bedroom Kandi positioned itself early in that space, which means it benefits from cultural tailwinds that are still accelerating. Revenue estimates place Bedroom Kandi in the range of $10 million to $15 million annually, with some reports suggesting even higher figures during peak years. For a brand that launched with no venture capital, no outside investors, and no corporate cosign, that number is remarkable. Old Lady Gang Restaurants. Named after Kandi's mother and aunts, the Old Lady Gang Restaurant Group is the most visible piece of Kandi's empire for Atlanta locals. Multiple locations spread across the city serve Southern comfort food in an environment that is equal parts community gathering place and brand experience. Old Lady Gang is not just a restaurant, it is a story. The food is rooted in family recipes, the atmosphere is warm and intentionally inclusive, and the brand sits at the intersection of Black Atlanta culture and mainstream food tourism, a positioning that drives consistent foot traffic from locals, tourists, and media. Beyond Old Lady Gang, Kandi expanded into Blaze Steak and Seafood, adding a more upscale dining option to her hospitality portfolio. The restaurant group, across all locations, is estimated to generate between $5 million and $8 million annually in revenue. Restaurants are notoriously difficult businesses. Margins are thin, staff turnover is high, real estate costs in Atlanta are rising. But the fact that Old Lady Gang has not just survived but expanded tells you something important about the operational discipline behind it. Production company and content. Kandi Koated Entertainment is the machine behind the machine. Founded during her solo music era, the production company has since expanded to cover television development, live events, brand partnerships, and Broadway co-productions. The Broadway dimension is particularly significant. In recent years, Kandi emerged as a major theatrical producer, co-producing acclaimed productions including Thoughts of a Colored Man, The Piano Lesson, The Wiz, and Othello. These are not vanity credits. These are real producing roles that come with real financial exposure and real financial upside. The 2025 revival of Othello, starring Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal, shattered Broadway box office records. A production at that level, with that cast, in that cultural moment, generates tens of millions of dollars in revenue during its run. Co-producers receive a percentage of net profits above recoupment. For a show that broke records, those returns are substantial. The production company also controls Kandi's masters, publishing administration, and licensing deals, meaning every time a brand wants to use her music, her image, or her intellectual property, that negotiation flows through a structure she owns. The real estate portfolio. Property is where quiet wealth becomes permanent wealth, and Kandi's real estate story is a masterclass in incremental, patient accumulation. In 2002, she purchased her first Georgia home for $250,000. She held it for 15 years, a period during which Atlanta real estate appreciated dramatically before selling in 2017. In 2012, she stepped into a 7,000 square foot, 7-bedroom Atlanta mansion for $512,000, scaling space as her family and her responsibilities grew. Her most recent Atlanta estate sits in the Morningside neighborhood, an area favored not for spectacle but for discretion. Old Atlanta energy. Mature trees, restrained architecture, and neighbors who value distance more than display. The 3-story home spans more than 6,000 square feet, wide oak floors, a floating staircase, a chef-level kitchen with Taj Mahal, quartz countertops, and a waterfall island. 6 bedrooms, 6 full bathrooms, a finished basement apartment with its own living area and bar, a stepped backyard already permitted for a future pool, a primary suite with a private balcony overlooking the forest. This is not a home designed for a magazine shoot. It is a home designed for a woman who plans to be here for decades. Every inch is intentional. Nothing is for show. The numbers behind the quiet power. Let us put the full picture together. Kandi Burruss has an estimated net worth of around $30 million by most conservative published figures. But the actual income-generating capacity of her portfolio tells a more expansive story, one that points toward a business machine with total enterprise value that analysts have placed in the range of $100 million. When you account for equity in her brands, catalog value, real estate holdings, and production assets. Her annual income is estimated across multiple streams. RHOA salary at its peak, approximately $2.3 million per season. Music royalties, between $1 million and $3 million annually. Bedroom Kandi revenue, estimated at $10 million to $15 million per year. Restaurant group revenue, $5 million to $8 million annually. Production company income, variable, but Broadway participation alone in record-breaking productions adds millions in a strong year. That is not one income stream, that is 6, and they are not correlated. A bad year in restaurants does not affect royalty income. A decline in reality television does not affect Bedroom Kandi. A slow year in music does not affect real estate appreciation. This is what financial architects mean when they talk about portfolio diversification. Kandi did not read it in a finance book. She built it by instinct, reinforced by discipline across 3 decades. The foundation Kandi cares. For Kandi Burruss, giving back has never been about press releases or polished photo opportunities. It has been about proximity, staying close to the realities she understands best. Around 2014, she formalized that commitment by founding Kandi Cares, a nonprofit organization rooted in education, empowerment, and long-term stability for single-parent families and their children. The mission is deeply personal. Kandi was raised in a single-parent household. She has spoken openly about how early responsibility shaped her discipline, her work ethic, and her sense of urgency. Kandi Cares reflects that lived experience, focusing not on temporary relief, but on practical support that helps families move forward with dignity. In 2017, she announced a $50,000 scholarship initiative aimed specifically at students from single-parent households. Beyond scholarships, the foundation distributes school supplies at the start of each academic year, runs food security programs including Thanksgiving meal distributions, hosts baby showers for expectant mothers, organizes art and recreation summer camps for younger children, and assembles care packages for college students entering their first year away from home. What stands out is the consistency. This is not a celebrity charity that activates around award season. It is a system, structured, sustained, focused on outcomes rather than optics. Kandi's philanthropy mirrors her business philosophy exactly. No savior narrative, no performative generosity, just a structure built to help people stand on their own the same way she stood on her own, by building something that could not be taken from her. The personal architecture. An empire is not just a balance sheet, it is a life. And to understand Kandi's wealth, really understand it, you have to understand the emotional architecture that holds the rest of it together. She welcomed her first daughter in 2002. From the beginning, she has been clear that family is not a backdrop to success, it is the reason for it. In late 2008, she began dating AJ Jewell. Their relationship moved quickly, leading to an engagement in January 2009. Months later, they called it off. But the grief that followed was far heavier than a broken engagement. On October 2nd, 2009, AJ Jewell died after suffering a head injury. That loss was quiet and devastating in equal measure. It reinforced what she had learned at 15, that progress is fragile and groundedness is not optional. Love returned in a different form. While filming Real Housewives of Atlanta, Kandi met Todd Tucker, a producer on the show. Their relationship began in 2011. By January 2013, she announced their engagement. They married on April 4th, 2014, in a ceremony that blended celebration with family tradition. Together, they welcomed a son in 2016 and a daughter through surrogacy in 2019, a choice Kandi spoke about openly and without apology. On November 20th, 2025, Kandi and Todd announced their decision to divorce after 11 years of marriage. The statement was measured, respectful, aligned with how she approaches everything directly, honestly, and with focus on stability for their children. Across everything, the joy, the grief, the public life, the private losses, one pattern holds. Leadership at home mirrors leadership everywhere else. She does not outsource responsibility, emotionally or practically. She protects her family with the same discipline she uses to protect her empire. By the time she stepped away from Real Housewives of Atlanta in 2024, the blueprint was complete. Hits became holdings. Visibility became leverage. Leverage became a business portfolio with multiple revenue streams, a philanthropic foundation with real infrastructure, a real estate portfolio built over more than 2 decades, and a production company with Broadway credits that would make most entertainment executives envious. She did not wait for the industry to give her permission. She did not build by accident. She built by design, quietly, consistently, without announcing every move before she made it. That is the lesson. Not just for people in entertainment, for anyone watching. The loudest people in any room are rarely the ones making the most lasting decisions. The builders, the real ones, are usually somewhere in the background, running the numbers, signing the deal, adding another brick to something that will still be standing long after the cameras move on. Kandi Burruss built in silence. She celebrated in private. And now, in her late 40s, with her children watching and her empire breathing and her catalog still paying, she is living proof that the most powerful thing a person can do is ignore the noise long enough to build something real. This is what generational wealth looks like when nobody's paying attention. If this series resonates with you, if you believe in studying the quiet builders as much as the loud ones, subscribe now. We are just getting started. Drop a comment below and tell us, would you rather chase the spotlight or build the system that funds it for the next 30 years? Because from where we are standing, one of those choices has a much better return on investment. Next episode drops soon. Don't miss it.